Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to Tactical Bassin. Today we're talking about where bass go in the summer and how to catch them. We'll be covering the locations, the styles of baits, colors, everything that will help you dial in your bass fishing going into summer. If you struggle with summer bass fishing, you are not alone. All over this country, there are people that are great at catching fish in the springtime. And once those temperatures start climbing, the fish disappear and they can't find them at all. It's very, very common. But the good news is where those fish go is actually extremely consistent, and you can get ahead of them and catch those fish. Not only can you catch them, you can catch a lot of them, and you can do it all summer long. Now, where these fish go depends on the kind of fishery that you're on. So we're going to break today's video into 4 different kinds of fisheries. We've got natural lakes, which will also include ponds. We've got river systems, rivers, creeks, maybe even deltas where you've got heavy current. Then we've got highland and lowland reservoirs. You fall into one of those 4 categories. If you're not familiar with what each one of those is, I'm not going to go in depth today like I have in previous videos. Instead, in the video description, I will link you. The very first link will be our last video on this subject, which was where do bass go during the spring to summer transition. We'll link that video because it has a clear description of the 4 different styles of water body. Today, instead, we'll just run through where the fish go in each one, where you need to be looking, and then some key baits. And I'll give you a glimpse of what's coming in our upcoming videos as well. So let's talk about the different styles of lake. Let's start with highland reservoirs. Okay, the fish there, they're splitting. You've got some fish in every one of these. You have some fish that will stay shallow, some fish that will go out deep. In a highland reservoir, the vast majority of fish will head out deep. They'll head out offshore to open water. Your fish are grouping up on the actual main lake point, so the last point coming out of an arm. If you've had fish way back spawning in pockets, they've worked their way back out the secondary points, and they're now on that last outer point. From there, they'll be on similar points throughout that area. If there are large main lake points between arms, they'll be on those as well. Then they're also going to be out on the actual offshore structure. They'll be out on the humps and ledges and creek channel bends as well. Those fish are really, really easy to target because typically they're up in the water column just a little bit. They like to suspend this time of year, so they're easy to see with electronics, and they're pretty simple to catch once you know what you're doing. We'll circle back to that. Lowland reservoir, guys. That's where I am today. I'm on a lowland reservoir on the Tennessee River. Lowland reservoir, guys, are actually extremely similar. Your outside fish are doing the exact same thing. They're leaving the bays. They're coming out of the pockets. They're going to set up on those outer points, ultimately headed out to the true ledges. They'll get out there on the edge of that current for most of the summer. Now, the second half of your fish, the shallow fish, they will stay really shallow. They'll push all the way back in the pockets. Those fish, if you have good grass, will be on that grass. Now, we talked in the previous video about the color line and how important it is. Again, back to that same video. If you missed it, it'll be in the video description because you need these to build on one another. But we talked about the color line in that video, how important that color line is. Well, this is where that really becomes critical because that grass line will grow out near that color line, and the biggest fish will be right where those two meet on those outer clumps of grass. That's where the big ones are for the shallow half of the fish. The really big ones that are out on the ledges take the very best spots. They'll take the best cover on the ledge, or if you can find a ledge where the depth matches the color line, that's where those giants are offshore. Now, where does that leave us? Let's talk natural lakes. Natural lakes, as we covered in the last video, I explained that as that grass started growing up, as those fish started backing out, again, color line was critical for you guys. Typically in a natural lake, you get really strong grass lines. Not in every one. Mainly because natural lakes have far less change, fluctuation in water level. Because it's not fluctuating, the grass line will grow out perfectly to your color line. So where that light penetration ends on the bottom is where that grass stops growing. You get a perfect edge there. The biggest fish will run that edge, and they'll be on those little anomalies that stick out further. That little bit of grass that actually hits the surface when the grass around it is just almost to the surface. The biggest ones are on those sweet spots. Now there will also be some fish that stay dirt shallow, way, way, way in the back up shallow. And they can be really fun as well if you want to go up there and chase them. Typically not as big, but good numbers and really fun fish that are often overlooked. Now the last group of guys, river guys, your fish are very, very consistent. When the summer heat is all the way up, a lot of people like to fish those deep pools, those slower sections. We actually really like that current. When that fish's metabolism is up, they tend to get on the first piece of cover just below fast water. So if you're fishing a creek or a river where you've got riffles and pools, those big, big fish will typically be on the first cover, the first place that they can hold just out of the fast water, right below the riffles, right below the fastest water. They won't sit down in the deep pools. They take that sweet spot. Now, of course, there are always exceptions to these rules. You know, like today, here I am in the middle of summer, and I've got thunderstorms rolling in. Now, it's still hot as can be, but it's going to rain here in the next few minutes. So little things can throw your fish off. But this pattern, this concept of sticking around color lines, fishing those farthest outside structures, and then turning around and fishing grass lines and color lines in tight, that combination will work so incredibly well all the way through to the fall. Now, with all of that, like I said in the last video, it all really boils down to shadows. These fish want to be in those shadows. They don't want to be in that direct sunlight. So the fish in the grass, they pick the thickest clumps. They'll sit right under it. If you see football fields of grass, that's all the same, and then there's one spot that's thicker than the rest, or a log somehow got up there inside that grass, or a different kind of weed is growing in the mix with the other grass and the canopy is a little thicker, that best fish, that fish you are looking for, will be right there in that darkest piece of cover in a giant field of cover. They take the very, very best spots. They're incredibly consistent. Again, if you don't have grass, you have shallow water fish, but you don't really have the grass, it's still about shadows. So your fish will get up. They'll sit under overhanging trees. They'll get up underneath the ends of docks if you have docks. Any place that they can find that little bit of shade. And if there's nothing, nowhere they can find shade at all, then 100% of those fish will be on that color line where that light penetration transitions. They will sit right on that line to get their shade, and they will hunt up. That scenario where you don't have grass, you've got pretty clean water, you've got a strong color line, can be some of the best top water fishing of your entire life. Now, on to the baits. And this is just a preview of the baits, okay? We've got videos coming over the next month or two on all of these topics, in-depth topics. But these are some of my absolute favorite techniques for this time of year. I picked 5. And each one of these, there's actually more than one bait. So in the video description, I'll give you, favorite worm, favorite frogs, favorite crankbaits, and I'll give you a couple of each as well as color recommendations. The first one though is a Senko or a plastic worm. Not just the Senko, but a 5-inch Senko will catch fish all summer long anywhere in this country. I said last year, I always grew up throwing 6 and 7 inch Senkos. We threw the bigger baits trying to catch bigger fish. But when we went cross country last year, which we are doing again right now, when we were going cross country last year, I really latched onto the 5-inch Senko because I found that no matter where we went, fish would consistently eat that bait. Now there's also a place in the summertime for shaky heads and big worms, not just a weightless worm. So again, I'll give you a couple favorites, but know that we've got some video coming on that topic. Next is topwater. The frog is my favorite topwater of the summer. I love it up in the grass, I love it in cover, but I also love it in completely open water. Catch this. If you want to show your fish something that they have never seen, and you live on a crystal clear impoundment, and your fish are out on the color line, so you're fishing 10, 20, 30, 50 feet of water on the color line, depending on how clear your lake is, and everybody else is throwing wake baits, spooks, poppers, whatever it might be, you can catch frogfish in that same situation. We catch frogfish in 100+ feet of water out in the middle of nowhere fishing the color line pattern. The fish will come up and massacre that thing. Now you might think, well, a frog is weedless, the hookup ratio isn't as good, so why would you do that? Why wouldn't you just throw a spook or a rover? The reason why is that in a lake that gets a lot of pressure, they have never seen the frog. So those fish are hesitant to blow up on the baits they're used to seeing. That is one that they've never seen. So I'll give you a couple of my favorite frogs and a couple just general topwaters and colors as well. The crankbait. Both the deep and the shallow crank. This is the time of year where I completely split my pattern. I'll have them both tied on. I'll have a giant deep crank tied on, and I'll have a square bill tied on, and I run both. But that cranking for those offshore fish, there's no faster way to cover that water and find those fish. You can get down, grind bottom, slam into the edges of the ledge, get that reaction bite, and then if it slows down, you can throw other baits. But there's no faster way than to find them with a crankbait. This time of year, in my deep cranks, I've got a couple very specific cranks that I like, and I like them in extremely bold colors. That powder blue chartreuse is one of my absolute favorite summer colors, even in clear water. I want the most aggressive reaction strikes that I can get, and I find that the bolder and brighter the color when the water temperatures are up in the summer draws the bigger bites. Now for square bills, the other end of the spectrum, and again, I'll link them for you, but the square bill, it's actually the opposite for me. I prefer the really chrome colors, the colors that throw a lot of light, give a lot of reflection. Those are the colors that I do the best with. Two different deals. When I'm up shallow, I like those chromes. When I'm out deep, I like that bright, bold look. Now, two more. This guy, one that we don't talk about a whole lot, a swing head jig. And also a jig in general, a football jig this time of year can be amazing. But a swing head jig is another dynamite bait because you can fish it in 2 feet of water. You can fish it in 50 feet of water. But you put a creature bait on there and you fish it much like you would a crankbait or a swim bait. Throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and just bump it along the bottom. It'll be bumping along, kicking, tails are flapping. Those fish love to eat those things. That's an amazing summer bait. A few years ago, it became extremely popular. It faded away just as quickly as it had come on, but the fish have not abandoned these. They will wolf them. So this is something that you do not want to overlook. I do extremely well. If I could only have one, it'd be a 1/2 ounce with a 4/0 hook with one of just a couple creatures. Last but not least would be the small swim bait. Now, not that you can't catch them on giant swim baits, but we're talking nationally, whether we're going all the way up north or we're fishing down south, we're fishing back home, or we're fishing on the Tennessee River, that smaller swim bait is incredibly consistent. My number one size is a 4.8 Kitech. I adjust from there all the way down to a 2.8, but a 4.8 on an underspin is amazing in the summer. The underspin much like that square bill, gives me that little bit of extra flash and vibration. And I think I draw fish from farther. Again, this time of year, fish are not afraid to chase the bait. As long as they know it's there, they will come and get it because their metabolism is high. They're willing to put in the effort and go hauling after something. So don't be afraid to fish a bait a little higher in the water and a little bit faster to try and draw that aggressive reaction. But the small swim baits are an amazing producer in the summer. Now, there are 50 other ways to catch them. There really are. But these are unbelievably consistent. Notice that I'm thousands of miles from home and I had all of these with me, knowing that I would be on the road going into summer. These are where our confidence lies. And again, we'll go in depth on each style of bait in the near future. But today, for those of you that know those patterns are coming and want to get ahead, you don't want to try and order when baits are out of stock, we wanted to give you a preview. So we'll link the specific baits and colors ahead of time, but know that much more in-depth videos are coming. If you don't know how to throw a swing head, how to deep crank, how to frog, those things are coming. But guys, get out there this summer. Don't be afraid to go fishing. Don't be afraid to stay out after first light. A lot of people only fish the morning session this time of year and then they head for home. I'm sweating. You know, it's hot, but the fish are still biting during the day. And during the heat of the day, because they are shadow driven, they're even more predictable than they are in the morning, and you can catch some really big bass. I hope this video helps you. It was a quick run through with a lot more to come, but I think you guys can do really well this summer with that info. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll talk to you soon.